If you've been watching the explosion of AI tools over the last few years, you're probably going to be wondering, how exactly are we meant to use this new technology? And you've probably also seen the latest journal article from MIT Media Lab, which more or less outlines that if we're about to use AI, we will become less intelligent over time. The reason being because we're giving our critical thinking faculties to an AI. The research was led by Natalia Kosmina, and she has a PhD in computer science. This was a very substantial body of research that gave a very nice outline of how we are meant to use AI in the modern age, with some caveats, which we'll get into a little bit later. But first things first, what exactly is the study and why would we need to know about it? Think of this study like an initial sailing expedition, where we're beginning to find our way around the globe for the first time, kind of like Nicholas Columbus sailing to find America. Now, on the initial journey with AI, all of us are experimenting. There's no recommended guideline on how to use it effectively. We're effectively having to take the technology, make up our own mind about whether it's useful, the extent to what we could do, and I guess fundamentally, we'll use an Einstein quote, our own creativity is going to be the limit to what we can attain from this new technology. Now, this study is very interesting because they're beginning to look at the impact of using this technology upon our functioning. And what I do find very interesting is the core conclusion that using your brain completely independent of AI, according to the study's data, is going to be more effective than using AI. And interestingly, doing the traditional Google search didn't fare that much worse compared to just using your brain. Now, on first glance, this would indicate that using AI is a bad idea and that really none of us should be using AI in our day-to-day lives. But that got me thinking, what if the study's interpretation is maybe not quite correct? What if there are some biases built into the study that, once we consider them, changes the interpretation of the data? So I had a look at the article. It's a very casual 206-page journal article. Wait, what? 206 pages? That definitely leaves my 2023 journal article in the dust. Self-insults aside, it's a substantial body of work, which would definitely be a phenomenal contribution in the field towards how AI is impacting human functioning. And this is where it gets interesting. Once I started going through the article, I began to notice some confounding considerations. The first of which is sample size. The fourth session in this study, which is the one critical for the conclusions that were drawn, had 18 individuals, and those individuals appeared based on their own willingness to return to the study for the fourth session, which means there was a degree of volunteering required. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had to go 4 times to a scientific institute and to fit a rather weird-looking cap, and true story, I've actually worn one of these once before, and I don't know if you've ever had highlights put into your hair. I've only done it once. It's kind of painful using a highlighting cap where you have to pull strands of your hair through, and then you apply all your chemicals, and you're up with a really cool-looking hairdo, maybe for prom, by example. That was the last time I dyed my hair, and I swore never to do it again, although that could change when my hair starts to go white in my old age. But anyway, back on topic. What I do find very interesting is that they were measuring EEG. Now, this particular process requires a very delicate instrument to be placed on top of the skull where we begin to measure electrical activity. And it's quite powerful because we end up mapping all of the signals traversing through the entire brain. And even more powerful, we can actually begin to look at the communication between different regions of the brain. We'll gloss over the results and just go for the punchlines. The first session, in my opinion, would be the most interesting. That's where the individuals who attended the study were not really biased by the study itself. They didn't get the opportunity to learn and adapt to the study methodology. So very, very, I'm going to say, true of the testing conditions. And if anything, that would be how most of us will be interacting with these kinds of technologies. And likely the best indicator of how our brains will respond the first time we receive this type of information. Now, in terms of the data, more or less supported that using your brain for an essay writing task is going to be far more effective than, say, using just Google or using AI, large language models, like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, and so forth. Now, the point that caught my eye that I haven't seen covered online is that the questionnaires specifically for the group that were using AI, study session 1, 2, 3, and 4, the group who was assigned to using ChatGPT for their essay generation, the individuals within the group all reported differently in terms of how they use the technology and how they even interpret AI technology. Some were confused, some found it life changing, some have already been using it before, others have never heard of it, and some found the answers maybe a little bit annoying or not even that helpful. They just felt like they could do it better themselves. And if anything, the conclusions are quite logical because it is a new technology. It's far more capable than any tool we have ever seen. It's going to continue to develop at a rate that no one is prepared to handle. And the end result is that this technology is likely going to change the way the world works. That remains to be seen, but if we listen to all the hype online, it's most likely going to exceed our expectations and ability. So, how do I view this technology? Well, I view it as an intelligence that is beginning to form its own cognitive thinking. At present, I don't think it does any cognitive thinking, and there's enough studies now to support that logic as well. It's actually really easy to test. If you take something new that has never been posted online, that is your own work, that an AI has never been trained upon, and you give it that information, it'll most likely 100% get it wrong. It won't be able to interpret, which I would say indicates that it doesn't have reasoning yet. But if you provided any information that it has seen previously, well, then it'll give you a beautiful answer to write a full essay and cover the information at sort of PhD level-ish, which is quite handy. But that brings us back to our core problem. If people are finding AI use confusing, not all people are using it in the same way, and there's no set benchmark for how to use it, wouldn't that mean that when we measure brain activity in those individuals, we're going to see some that have maybe high brain activity, some with low brain activity, some with moderate brain activity? When we average it out, presumably the results aren't going to be very impressive because, one, we know for a fact that when you're using AI, you're forfeiting critical thinking that you would normally have to do when you use your brain to, for example, brainstorm for an essay or even to physically write the essay. So that's one thing. But the other thing, of course, is that if the group itself is in disarray, I'm going to call it cognitive dissonance, a fancy term for saying that people are somewhat confused. Wouldn't that in itself bias the results? I'll leave that up to you to decide. Add in a second factor, which is that the sample size is only 18 people. Now, it'd be lovely to see a research article that has a much larger volume because I think right now it's very limiting in power. We can't really generalize whether AI is good for cognitive functioning or not, but as a sort of preliminary, very detailed study, I think it's beneficial because it gives us the likely most appropriate way to use AI. Firstly, you're going to want to try and solve the problem by yourself, ideally without any AI. And if we take the study at face value, maybe not even Googling the information, which means you want to first think about the material, study the material yourself, work through it yourself. Once you've gained some degree of understanding, and maybe when you get stuck, that's when you're going to turn to the technology and try and find a way to augment your credibility, which still means AI is, at least from my perspective, meant to serve as your personal assistant. And indeed, that's exactly how I use it in day-to-day interactions. And talking day-to-day interactions, have you seen the new operator function? Man, that's so cool. The ability to have a live dialogue with the AI. My only complaint there's a limit on it. Theoretically, it'd be really cool to have the ability to talk to an AI all day, anytime you run into a problem, whatever the situation may be, you simply state the problem and then the answer is produced for you. Whatever it may be, from, or plan what I'm going to have for lunch, or book me a flight to go to a conference, or find me a hotel for a holiday destination, find me coffee that costs less than $25 a bag. That's New Zealand dollars. Now, when we consider all of this together, I think we begin to frame the solution to the problem that we didn't even know was the problem. And I think overall, This technology now leads us with an opportunity. We need to create set definitions for how we are using the technology, but the number one priority should still remain our own minds. We must use our full cognitive ability. Use it to augment your core functioning, not to replace your core functioning. That's going to be the critical thing. And that actually reminds me, back in my university days when I was studying in the library for extended periods of time, because as it turns out, the amount of time you spend in the library is directly proportional to your grade, although not entirely linearly, if you know what I mean. But something that I used to do was when I sit in the library in my little spot, working my way through notes that I had taken from lectures and so forth, every time I got stuck, I would pull out my phone, jump onto a website like Wikipedia, full disclosure, and I would find a little bit more reading material about the topic that maybe I wasn't clear on, maybe the textbook didn't go into it in enough detail, or the lecture slides covered it very briefly, and then I would do additional reading. I would then add that into my core notes, which I guess was augmenting my ability to complete the task. So in some ways, it's really similar to how we use AI in the modern age. The difference being that now it's at our fingertips and it's much faster and so much more accurate, generally. Although, again, there are some caveats where it can begin to hallucinate, so we do have to be careful. We must still be the expert, otherwise, the AI will create chaos for us, which is equally risky. Well, I just wanted to share that analysis of that very interesting journal article. If you do want to read through the article a bit more, by all means, I'll try and leave the link in the video description. If you did enjoy today's video, by all means, consider subscribing to the channel. What is Areteerga all about? Well, I founded this channel on the principle that everyone has the ability to reach their full potential in life. All we need is a little bit of mentorship. And I guess that's my role, to pass on anything and everything that I believe to be helpful to help you to succeed in life. Now, if you do seek additional information or training, by all means, check out my website where I do share additional resources on every discipline that I have gained some expertise in. On that note, I'll leave you with a quote. In a world where things around us move at the speed of light, sometimes all we need is to take a moment with a torch in hand to find our path. I'll see you in the next video.